Testing 1, 2, 3. audio. Alice, if you can hear me, can you nod your head? Courtney, are you with us on the line?
Turn it on.
Yes, I am, Mandy.
I
Do
just
you
did. It was.
have the special called meeting document for Mayor Hill?
Hold on just a second. And I will pull that up and send it over.
Where is it?
It's right up here.
You need to see him.
Just have to give it to him. Can't stay.
She had to do.
I have the meeting notice. Courtney, I wasn't given the call itself. I don't know how much that wording would differ.
Mandy, the meeting notice would work.
I just sent that to you.
To Mayor Hill, please.
Oh, I just sent it to you. Okay, I'll send it to him.
Mandy, can you hear me?
Yes, you've got a bit of an echo, but I can hear you.
Okay, well,
I just sent that to you. Oh, I just sent it to you. Okay, I'll send it to him. Alice, I think you're on two different systems. If you mute one of them, the echo would stop.
well, I can't see.
Well, this one just got muted too, but when one of them is unmuted, we can hear you.
It says start video, but I don't think that's going to show your face. How may I help you?
I think you've been muted, Alice, by the moderator. She'll unmute the one that says Alice Adams when it's time for you to talk. So you'll be able to see, and we'll be able to hear you without the echo feedback.
I don't know.
Okay, tell him to come back so he can do it. She had a special thing she had sent to me and I hadn't called her back.
You not muted, so.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm trying to get where I can see y'all. I just wanted to make sure I was there. Okay. That's the agenda. I got it right there. I guess it's all right. If you want, if you can, if not, don't worry about it. Just long as. Anybody else in me? Mandy, anybody else in besides me?
Frown, can you look on the bottom, this Commissioner McCaskill, do you see a little icon on the bottom that says participants? Because if you can put your mouse over that and click on it, you can see who all is in the meeting. You see where I'm talking about? Unmute your microphone. At the bottom, you can hit mute and unmute yourself. And then you can also click on the bottom where it says participants, Vice Mayor, and then that'll tell you who's all attending the meeting. Are you with me? Unmute a microphone. Who's understanding? Yeah.
Not try, it won't work. for me.
Okay, is it working? You hear me now?
Yes, ma'am. Now, do you
Good
see
job, good job,
down
JB.
at the bottom where it says participants?
Yeah, I see the mayor and I saw Justin a few
Okay,
minutes
but
ago.
click on the bottom and then it will, if you click on that, it'll tell you all of the participants that are in, because right now it's 14 participants.
That's it right there.
Okay. You clicked on it? Did you click it?
Did you see it right there?
That Hello? Yes, who is this? Hey, Takeria, y'all just muted it. I can't.
There you go.
Just tell them I'm muted.
Mute her. Oh. We're gonna go ahead and mute everyone's lines. If you need to speak, then go ahead and unmute your line when it's time for you to speak so that we don't get any feedback. At this time, we want to welcome everybody to our special call, April 23rd, 2020 Palatka CRA meeting. The special notice of call meeting for the city of Palatka CRA is hereby given. That a special call meeting of the city of Palatka CRA is called to be held via video and teleconference at 4:30 p.m. on April 23rd, 2020. The meeting will originate from City Hall located at 201 North 2nd Street, Palatka, Florida. For participation, attendance may occur by one or all commissioners, mayor, and the public via communications, media technology in accord with Governor DeSantis' executive order number 20-69 issued on March 20th, 2020. The agenda, web link, and call-in information will be posted on the city's website and City Hall prior to the meeting. All meetings are open to the public. Individuals can call 386-329-0100 to obtain information on how to attend. Any person desiring to appeal any decision made by this agency with respect to any matter considered at these meetings will need a record of the proceedings, and said person may need to ensure that a verbatim record of the proceedings is made, which includes the testimony and evidence upon which the appeal is to be based. Florida Statutes 189.015. Please govern yourselves accordingly. At this time, we're going to have our invocation and pledge. And we're going to do that. I'm going to ask Mr. Holmes if you could lead us in the invocation and pledge. And there's a flag situated just behind me. So at this time, we'll have our invocation and pledge.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then I guess we'll stand and do the pledge first. So I see the flag behind you. So if you would join me in the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag.
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and with liberty and justice for all. If you would now for the invocation, please. Bow your heads. Lord, we come to you this afternoon, exercising rights that you've given us in this great country to meet and deliberate the business of the citizens in a free environment. We ask that you guide us in what we do this afternoon to make it pleasing in your eyes, because we know that if it's pleasing in your eyes, it will also be in the best interest of the city. We say a special prayer today for one of our own who we lost last Friday, and ask that you would be with he and his family and friends and comfort them in this time of sorrow and need. In Christ's name I pray, amen.
Amen. At this time, we're going to go ahead and have our roll call. What do you want me to do it? Okay. Commissioner, Vice Mayor Brown. I see Vice Mayor Brown is here. Commissioner Campbell.
Present.
Commissioner Borum.
Present.
Commissioner McCaskill.
Here.
Representative for Putnam County, Commissioner Rawls.
Here.
Got you. And downtown Palatka, Ms. Kemp. I see Ms. D on here. Can you hear me? Ms. D?
She said,
Speaker's not working. She's here. Speaker's not working. Here we go. Thank you. And so let the record reflect that all members are present and accounted for, and we have a quorum. Next up is approval of the minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to look at the minutes from our March 2nd meeting?
Motion to approve.
Can you state your name so that we'll have it?
Commissioner Bohr, motion to approve.
Commissioner
Second.
Bohr. There's a motion by Commissioner Bohr, a second by Commissioner Rawls. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, questions called. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to public comments. Public comments will be limited in this case to chat by our YouTube page. So at this time, we will have public comment. Anyone wishing to give public comment, please log in to the YouTube. If you're watching through YouTube live, just give us your chat comments in the chat line, and we will go ahead and address those questions as they come up. Do we have any comments coming in at this time?
Commentary, good afternoon.
So anyone with a question, we'll give it about 30 more seconds for you to type your question. Seeing none, we will close public comment at this time. And just tell us if we have any other comments come through. We'll make sure we get them. Any questions? Moving forward on our agenda at this point, item number 1 is a recruitment grant for 300 St. John's Avenue, Hotel James, Andalusia Holdings is the applicant. Tate Miller is the representative for Andalusia Holdings. You should have the packet in the agenda if you recall. This is coming before us as a part of a recruitment grant application. Before I start with Mr. Miller, Ms. Tucker or Mr. Griffith, do you want to start out and kind of give the background information?
Certainly. The CRA received a recruitment grant application from Andalusia Holdings for Hotel James at 300 St. John's Avenue. The evaluation committee, consisting of the mayor, the city manager, and myself, held a noticed meeting on April the 9th and recommended an award of $50,000, though changes to the budget would be necessary to fund the project. And then we do have on the meeting call Ms. Robbie Correa, Mr. Tate Miller, and Mei Ling Wang, if you have any questions for them about the project.
Okay, so if we can, let me go ahead and have Mr. Miller give a background of what the project encompasses. Most of you can see on the shared screen the application that's there. You have the ability to scroll up and down the application. But also, Mr. Miller, can you give some background information on the project itself?
Sure. Hello, everyone.
Hey.
This initial first step that we're trying to take on the project is to simply take the exterior of the building, the first floor only, on St. John's Avenue and on 3rd Street, and clean that part of the building up so that it, number one, shows progress and gives us an opportunity to then take a next step, which is finding potential tenants to come in and occupy commercial space in that first floor. We decided that this would be the best strategy for a number of reasons. Number one, it will take longer to do the full project, obviously, but opening up this first floor for potential commercial use gives us number one, it shows progress on the building. We think that it will possibly inspire other projects in downtown Palatka. It would be a tremendous visual improvement for the city, for anyone passing by on 3rd or in St. John's Avenue. And the biggest part of this for us is to simply show that the community that since we've taken ownership of the building, we've done a lot of cleanup inside. There's been no work done, but a tremendous amount of cleanup inside the building. And now we want to take that first floor and show some exterior progress and use that appearance to talk with potential commercial tenants. And that's the entire background of this application. So Robbie Correa is here with me, and I'm going to ask her if she has anything to add to that, any other background. And also my partner, Mei-Ling Wong, who's sitting in Southern California, if she has any comments to add to that.
Mei-Ling, do you have anything to add?
I don't at this point. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Robbie Correa here. I don't have a lot to add, except I think within the, well, I know within the packet is a rendering of the proposed look for the front, which would open up the portico that's been closed for, I don't know how long, many, many years. I also think, again, this is my perspective, it would increase pride in place, which we're going to need badly after we get through this whole pandemic process. It will show people that things aren't going to happen downtown, even though we've been on hiatus. And it will, again, it is one of the catalyst buildings for downtown that will make downtown pop and move forward. That is our, you know, our vision and dream. So I think this will be significant. Obviously, it's only phase 2, phase 1 being the cleanup of the building internally. But and so this is going to be a long process, folks. This is not the end all, but certainly it's a good kickoff and start. And it will be great to have that partnership from the CRA and city.
And the fact, if I could remind everyone, the building is now on the National Historic Register, and specifically to see it because it's listed on the register, and having the appearance improved will be, we think, a big step to attract even more people because of the historical registration.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
So I stand in favor of this. Biggest question I had, I read through all the documentation, was there was a request for the business plan. The business plan that was submitted was for the Lemon Street Cafe. I didn't know if that was a mistake. It looked a little bit lacking. It didn't look complete, but it was for a bakery cafe. I didn't know if this ties directly to that or if that was just done by mistake.
Yeah, if I could address that, please. And that's a good observation, Jeff. A business plan was one of the check boxes that we had to on the application itself.
Right.
I don't want to be, I want to be absolutely transparent here with everyone. This step does not include opening a cafe. That's simply aspirational. And we think we can get a lot better tenant than anyone opening just a small bakery or cafe in there. But Jeff, that was really done because it was a requirement for the application. But I want to be very clear here. What we're really applying for is money to really dress up the exterior of the building only. We're confident that we can find commercial tenants, but that particular part of the application is not a commitment that we're making to open a small bakery named Lemon Street Bakery.
Okay. Like I said before, I stand in favor of the grant application. I just couldn't figure out how one tied to the other. So that answers my question.
Thank
Okay,
you.
great. And also just keep in mind, for the time being, the CRA has frozen all programs of
Right.
the central business TIF, with the exception of the recruitment grant. And that was one of the requirements,
Yep.
as Tate stated.
Yep.
I have one question, Commissioner Borum.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I read through the grant or with the overall project. While I'm in favor of the overall project, it's going to do a lot for us from an economic development standpoint. But I saw in there where it was talking about there's no profit or whatever is going to be made from the sales of the merchandise or whatever the product, you know, the sandwiches and everything else. So you're not making any no profit from the first phase of it. How are you going to generate the rest of your funding for the future phases?
I think, again, as was said to Mr. Rawls, that the business plan was an aspirational one. We may also go to the concept, which was suggested by somebody, of pop-up markets. This is not carved in stone that it will be this cafe bakery at this point. Again, we had to produce a business plan. We tried to come up with something, but we also did not want to lie and mislead and come up with these figures that were not realistic or based in any fact. So we have other ideas about how to generate some of the funding or investment into this project. But again, that was specifically a requirement of the grant.
And if I could just add two things, what we really want to do here, and I really hope to do this within the next few months, if we can get the right tenant, the commercial tenant, to come in on the corner of 3rd and St. John's, to open up a really, really nice restaurant, bar / cafe. And then the rest of the first floor, we want to open that up for some kind of convention meeting space that would seat maybe 200, 250 people. And then gradually open the rest of that area up as time allows for any other commercial space shops that might come in. But initially, to find the right tenant on that corner, and then open up the rest of that first floor for convention space, and then gradually open it up over time to shops. Now, the real long-term economic impact report that you see in that packet, that's the thing that I want to hang my hat on here. The long-term economic impact to the city of Palatka, to the county, is tremendous once this building is fully developed. It's not going to happen quickly. We all know that. This is still another 2 to 3 years out before we see that full potential being realized. But I think if you look at the long-term economic impact, that would be the reason to really support this, because this is the first step to take in the journey to get to that long-term economic impact.
Well, so Commissioner Bourne, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking from a standpoint of utilizing the funds, the 50,000 from the city, utilizing those funds, and not really understanding like the time frame as it relates to overall economic development piece of it. When will it be active? I know we've had a number of issues with people having initiatives with the city of Palatka with the private-public partnership, and a lot of those end up not being completed. So that's just my only fear as it relates to just putting out $50,000 up front. But again, I am for the project.
Just to mention this, Commissioner Borum, the CRA, the intent of the CRA is to eliminate blight and revitalize the city. And so, I mean, I didn't create this little tagline, but it's about fixing buildings, not people. So I think, again, it's important to make sure that we start investing it back into the downtown district. That money specifically earmarked for that, unlike other city funds.
Right. I think one other thing I want us to address is the match element of this, and there's a bit of a nuance to it as it relates to the match. And can you guys just give the proposal as it relates to the match that came from the committee?
Mayor, who was that directed to? I'm sorry.
You can go ahead and talk about it, Mr.
And go ahead, and could you repeat that, please? What was?
Just go ahead and explain the match and how the funds dedicated for your architectural piece will be used for the match.
Okay, well, as you can see, obviously there's a match there, and we've already spent a great deal, and the receipts are part of that packet in terms of what we've spent. We have retained an architect, and some of that work has been completed, but there's still architectural work to be completed. We're committed to making sure that all of that is part of our obligation. So if you look at what we're asking from the city, we know that we're obligated for that match, and you can see the documentation in the packet there.
Mr. Mayor,
any questions from that?
When there's an opportunity, someone on chat, Miss D, has a question when possible. I assume that she's going to chat it. I guess her speaker is not working.
Yes. Can you read the question for me?
And she says, I have a question when possible. So,
okay.
And she doesn't. So let me type a message. Oh, she says, Tate, this question is for, while I fully support this project, And that's where she's ending right now, so. Let me talk. There are many, so here's the rest of it. There are so many restaurants downtown that are struggling. And I'm reading her chat now. How do you propose to maintain and fund future projects? So her question in the entirety is, Tate, this question is for you. While I fully support this project, there are so many restaurants downtown that are struggling. How do you propose to maintain and fund future projects?
Okay, great question. And obviously, everyone knows that any kind of restaurant business is a high risk. But I personally feel that even though we do have some food establishments downtown, the type of food establishment that we want to bring in, I think is going to be something a grade or two above what we have. And because of our location, because of the history of the hotel, I think that we can attract a different kind of clientele. And I think that's going to be especially true if we put in a really high level restaurant that fits a market that I don't think is yet being served in downtown Palatka.
And I think, in fact, we know, not given the current circumstance, that many people right now in Putnam County and Palatka travel to St. Augustine for a more upscale dinner or dining, and
Sure.
because it's not offered here as much. And so I think it would attract that particular folks to stay closer to home, particularly if they want to have a cocktail and eat a quality meal. We don't have any real farm to table kind of thing. So I think all of those things would bring people into town, plus obviously the history of the building.
Mr. Mayor, again, reading from the chat, same participant, Miss D, asks, how far behind with the additional development?
Well, frankly, given our national circumstance with the virus, that's pretty much anyone's guess right now. We want to move forward aggressively. That's my answer on this. And I will move forward as aggressively as possible to get this project developed, because we have a big investment in this, not just financial investment, but it's also a community investment. And I know that it's to everyone's advantage, mine as well as the city and the county, to get this done as quickly as possible. All I can say is we get this first step completed. We're going to do everything possible to ramp up the action on this building, to open up that first floor and to move forward with getting the rest of the building developed as quickly as possible. I can't commit to a particular time frame. There are just too many variables, but you have my absolute commitment that we will do it as aggressively and as quickly as possible.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
A question for Mr. Miller. You referenced a metal roof in this application. Are y'all switching the roof type from the flat roof material to a pitched roof with metal?
Jeff, actually, that's something. Let me look at the application here. That may be an error. We have no plans to do anything on the roof other than to make sure that it's sealed up in the initial phase, completely watertight. In the long term, Jeff, I really hope to do something very special on that roof with some kind of raised, maybe observation deck with a bar on the top floor, so that by itself it becomes an attraction and of value to both the owners and to the city. But nothing particular about changing any of the roof from its current situation to metal.
And anything that's done in the building has to be within keeping of the National Park Service Historic Register standards. And we have to watch that, especially if in the future federal historic tax credits are going to be applied for. You have to really adhere to them. So we're going to be cautious with everything as to how we do the exterior.
Like I said at the beginning, I'm in favor of this. The question I would have for the rest of the CRA is, are we going down a slippery slope if we approve this based on a hypothetical future project that may or may not happen? Should this be tabled for some more information that would actually be able to bring in a viable business, whether it's a restaurant, an office, whatever? I just wonder what happens if somebody else comes in here in the future with the same ask and says, look, I think in the future I could attract another tenant in my space, and what do we do? I'm just, what are the rules basically is what I'm asking for.
There's a criteria. If you look at the recruitment grant,
Mhm.
in your packet, there's an entire criteria as to how the grant works.
Right.
Can you pull up the page that's about 7 pages in that says recruitment grant criteria and grant requirements?
I'm looking at it.
Okay. I'm trying to get her to pull it up on the share screen as well.
It says it says you must maintain a 2-person staff. It's only for occupation of storefront that have been vacant for the expansion of existing businesses into adjacent unoccupied or unutilized space. It just sounds like the way I read this, you have to have something teed up, ready to go in. Again, I'm in favor of this, but I just don't want to open a box up that we're going to be locked into in the future. If somebody comes in and says, okay, I think in the future I might be able to bring a tenant in, and therefore I'm going to ask for a grant.
I think one of the things that was discussed with Mr. Miller and Ms. Correa as it related to their intentions for the project itself on the interior in the interim was the ability to be able to do the pop-up shops and also to be able to have in smaller vendors to come in. I think it would meet the criteria for having the 2 jobs as to where we are. But I think ultimately where we need to be is, I think we all have the same sentiment. We believe that the James Hotel is going to be a catalyst as it relates to downtown development.
Right.
And I think at the end of the day, we're either going to have to, kickstart this thing in some fashion or the other, or continually just wait for something magical to happen as it relates. There's some activity going on. I think this grant in itself is one no different than what we've done with some of the big grants in the past, or even the facade grants, where I think the return was minimal, if any, as related to those grants. But this is an opportunity for us, I think, more than anything else, to take probably the hottest corner in downtown and be able to provide at least the aesthetics, which shows us that something is coming. And I think it triggers the remaining commitment to put everything else in action. Any other comments from the?
What about number 9, where it says you're required to be in there 30 days following the completion of the grant improvements?
Would you be able to do that, Mr. Miller?
To be able to do what in 30 days?
To be able to actually start, business activity within 30 days of the completion of the grant?
Yeah, I think I can commit to that, but let me just add one footnote here. You probably have seen there has, up until the time the virus shut everything down, we had a contract with a food truck on the Reed Street end of this hotel. That food truck vendor has desperately wanted to actually move into the hotel in some fashion. And this guy already, and because we reached this agreement with him, he employs 3 full-time people as part of our agreement with him. We've done that even without any support or any grant money. We brought that in, provided enough infrastructure for him to get started. And when things are opened up again, he plans to come back. I don't know if that counts or not, Commissioner Rawls and everyone else, but that is an element that I think should be taken into consideration. We've already generated income and activity on that building.
And if this is Commissioner McCaskill, I didn't catch the answer to the question that Mr. Rawls asked. What was your response to the question? Because I didn't hear it from the beginning.
Oh, the 30. He said that he thinks he can commit to being able to employ to start business activity within 30 days of completion of the project.
Yes, I can commit to that.
Mayor, this is Jonathan Griffith. Can I say something, please?
Yes, sir.
Typically, it's not in the document, but the practice has been to hold back a 10% retainage until a CO is issued.
Any other questions?
It looks like Miss D had another one on the chat.
All right, let me pull it up.
Jonathan, Commissioner McCaskill, again, that's 10% of the $50,000 you're speaking on?
Yes, ma'am.
And so, Commissioner McCaskill, you got another question to go over that?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. I think Ms. D's question follows up with what you have, which is, how would this impact the budget, and where do you propose the budget amendment comes from, Mr. Griffith and Ms. Tucker?
Yes, the budget does have some funds and other inactive incentives that could be reallocated to fund the project.
Does that answer your question, Ms. D, or do you need some additional detail?
Hi, this is Logan Becker. Just wanted to confirm what Ms. Tucker just said. The HIP program has been suspended, and although we're not exactly sure when it will be reactivated, there's $29,000 in there that we could reallocate, and there's also $21,000 in the facade grant line that we can reallocate. It's just important to note that if we do those two things, although it'll get us to the 50,000, it's going to result in $0 for the HIP and the facade if we should reactivate those by the end of the fiscal year.
Would that be from CBD?
I'm sorry.
That be from CBD?
Yes.
Any questions or concerns? Anything from the agency? Ms. D asked which activities, and I think Ms. Becker just answered her question by saying which programs it would come from for the reallocation. Yes, she says yes. Are there any other questions at this time as it relates to this, or a motion?
I'll entertain a motion. Well, I'll make a motion.
Commissioner Ross.
But this is, I think before I do, I'd like to hear what Mr. Holmes has to say about this. Does he have any opinion about whether or not it would be improper to move this forward? Did he leave?
No, he's here.
I'm trying to unmute now. I think probably that I have some of the same questions that you've raised, Mr. Rawls. The grant criteria, they are a little vague in that they don't specify timeframes. For instance, I also picked up on what you did about the grant criteria requiring the creation of 2 jobs, but it doesn't say when. It says proposed business. Perhaps the more troubling one for me is that the time frame that you referenced. I'm trying to get back to it right now. It required to occupy the space 30 days following completion of the grant improvements and the issuance of a certificate of occupancy by the city. You know, theoretically, if the grant improvements are the painting of the building, then if I understood Mr. Miller correctly, his statement was that he would be occupying the building within 30 days after the completion of the improvements that the grant is going to fund. Is that correct? Mr. Miller?
Not within 30 days after the grant is funded, but after the work is completed is the way I understood the question. Am I correct or am I incorrect?
Yeah, I think you understood it correctly. It says applicants are required to occupy the space 30 days following completion of the grant improvements and the issuance of a CO by the city. So reading that literally, it would appear to me that it would say that within 30 days after the improvements are completed that are funded by the grant, you would be occupying the space. And your answer to that question was, yes, you could.
That's correct, Mr. Holmes.
So from my perspective, since it doesn't specify when the 2 full-time staff has to be in place, but he's going to be occupying the premises within 30 days following completion of the improvements that are being funded, that's when I would assume he would have staff there. So I could not on its face say that it does not meet the criteria.
I'd like to make a motion.
Just one second, Commissioner. There was a question also that came in from the public which pertained to the 100 block. And just for the record, the project that we're talking about is on the 300 block of St. John's Avenue, but not the 100 block. So the 100 blocks plan or anything that deals with the 100 block is not a part of the discussion for today. Just so that we have that. Okay, Commissioner, I just wanted to make that for the public. You can make your motion now.
Okay, but just for clear, Mr. Holmes, it would not be imprudent or improper for us to move this forward, correct? Based on.
All I can do is look at the grant criteria and advise you whether or not I believe the application violates the criteria. And based upon Mr. Miller's statement as to criteria number 9, I would say that in my opinion, it does not violate the criteria that are specified.
So I'd move that we go ahead and move this forward.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor to approve the grant application. There's a second by Commissioner Borum. Is there any further discussion from the agency?
Question called.
Commissioner McCaskill.
Question.
Questions called by Commissioner McCaskill. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose, and we've got an aye from Ms. D. Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Okay, we're ready to move forward. We look forward to hearing from you guys in the future. So again, thank you for being a catalyst for our downtown activity.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for the support, and you've got our commitment that this is going to be a special building when it's all said and done. Thanks again.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Moving forward on our agenda to item number 2, a request for subordination to the city's lien 2019 TIF HIP project at 600 North 3rd Street. Alice and Donnie Adams are the homeowners. They are in attendance. I saw Ms. Adams on here earlier. Mr. Holmes, you and Ms. Tucker can take this item if you want.
Yes, sir. Tax increment fund home improvement program grant with the Adamses was completed at their home at 600 North 3rd Street on April the 10th, 2019. The amount of TIF funds expended was $12,888.27. Guarantee Title has made a request on behalf of the homeowners for the city to subordinate its lien for this project for their refinance. Staff needs direction on subordination because it is not covered in the program documents. And as you said, the homeowner is on the meeting call if you have any questions for her.
Mr. Holmes, you have anything else to add?
By way of explanation, perhaps, as I'm sure all of the board members understand, subordination of a lien means that you take a lien that is of a higher priority and subordinate it to a lien that is of a lower priority. So since our lien for the TIF HIP funds, and it looks like that my screen is moving now off of the page that it was on, but since our lien for the TIF HIP funds would be prior in time to the new lien of the refinance, our lien would be superior to the lien of the refinance unless we subordinated it to the refinance. In asking questions, and I'm sure Ms. Adams will correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that there was an existing HELOC lien/loan on the property. then our TIF-HIP lien was recorded. Of course, liens normally are, their priority is based upon point in time, the chronology of when they are recorded. So the HELOC loan was first, then we recorded our lien. But now my understanding is they would be borrowing money to basically pay off the HELOC fund. And so in doing that, they'd have a new financing, a new mortgage, a new lien, and our lien would be placed, would be elevated from a second priority lien to a first priority lien. A lot has to do in those situations with the exact circumstances. We don't have a policy in place. That's why I didn't feel comfortable in making a determination. My understanding is that in this particular case, the lien is dropping by percentage each year. So right now, I think Ms. Tucker indicated that the amount that would be paid back would be $64.44. I think that is 50% of the original TIF-HIP grant. 1 year more, 1 year later, it would drop down to 25% of the TIF-HIP grant. And my understanding is that after 3 years, the TIF-HIP grant would not have to be repaid. So in this particular case, to cut to the chase, it would appear to me that there's little disadvantage to the city by allowing our lien to be subordinated to the new finance or to the refinance. In 3 years, the lien is going to, the obligation of repayment would be going away anyway. And quite frankly, we had a secondary lien to start with. The only reason it's being elevated is because they're paying off the HELOC, and in doing so, they're borrowing new money. So if I didn't confuse you in that process, from my perspective, the disadvantage to the city or to the CRA is not significant. And in this particular case, I do not see a harm in the subordination, but we've never done it before. We have no policy in place. And so the board would need to consider whether they are going to do these in any circumstances.
Right. So in essence, there's no change in that position for the city. In fact, there's going to be a lower amount from where we are currently in a few months.
Mr. Chairman?
And, yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve this, take a subordinate position as we already had. But, and I would also like to encourage the CRA to adopt a policy in the future that would allow this to happen without having to bring before the CRA.
Thank you.
There's a motion on the floor in a second. Is there any further discussion? And I think one of the things that's there is as we talk about just adopting policies and things of that nature in the future, it's going to be putting together criteria that includes the amount of the lien, all the other activities that we discussed today, so that we'll be in that place. But that's just my comment. Any additional comments as it relates to this motion?
Oh, yes, I just want to clarify what Commissioner Ross just made, Board Member Ross just said. We have two included in that motion. Can you explain it to me again? Can you repeat that motion again before
The motion is to go and allow us to take a second position, which would allow them to get their HELOC. We would be subordinate with our lien to their the lender's primary lien.
And it's an additional part. Am I right?
So they're taking out a home equity loan, and so his motion is to allow their home equity loan to be the primary loan. And for our loan,
we had an additional part, right, Mayor Hill? I'm sorry.
he just made a suggestion that we actually look at adopting a policy in the future.
Okay, question.
Questions called? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Ms. D says yes as well. Okay.
Thank
Moving.
you. This is Miss Adams speaking. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And again, thank you guys for the work that you've done on your property as well.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
Moving on to item number 3 of the agenda, ranking of proposals, RFP 2019-16, Community Redevelopment Area Consulting Services. Ms. Tucker, you're up.
Yes, so the recommendation by the evaluation committee for RFP 2019-16 was presented at the last meeting. Following the board's direction, staff distributed both proposals to the board for review. And staff is asking direction from the board to proceed either with award recommendation or the board's desire to see presentations from both companies before making its recommendation. And representatives from both companies are on the meeting call, I believe, if the board has any questions for them at this time.
And what we'll do is I'll go ahead and let both of the organizations just go ahead and do an introduction, and then I will have staff give its recommendation following that, and then we'll follow up with questions from the agency. So. So you can go ahead and.
Okay, I'm trying to see. Ms. Dietrich, are you still on the call with us?
I am.
Okay, so we have Laura Dietrich from Dietrich Planning, was one of the submittals, and I'll let you go ahead and state your piece first.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and commissioners and staff. As you've known me for a long time, I guess I'll just introduce myself to those who may be on the call that don't know me. I was a city planner 20 some years ago in Jacksonville, having basically been involved in everything from brownfields and housing to long range planning, of course, then promoted by Mayor Payton to be the redevelopment specialist for the JEDC, then moving on to be the regional planning director for Kimley Horn, having also been the FRA representative for the region for several years, and having been a small business owner of Dietrich Planning for the last 9 years. I've been working as a planner with Palatka since 2006. There have been numerous iterations and projects. I've spent the last couple of years working with you all to help actually pro bono run workshops to help move things along so that way you could get to this point. So again, it's my honor to have spent a lot of years working with you, and I wish you the best regardless.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, and next we have Mr. John Jones with S&ME, who was the second respondent.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. This is John Jones, project manager with S&ME, located in Orlando, Florida. S&ME has had the opportunity to work with over 52 CRAs in 23 counties in the state of Florida. And over the past 29 years, community redevelopment has been my primary focus in the land planning world. I have served on the FRA board for the past 3 years and have been active in the Florida Redevelopment Association for the past 2 years. In the past 3 years, we have created and updated 8 community redevelopment plans and 3 finding of necessity studies. Very honored to be considered for this position, and I'm very proud of the work that the city of Palatka has done heretofore in revitalizing their downtown and waterfront.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Tucker, your recommendations of this?
Yes, the evaluation committee and the score sheets were attached and in the packet, came to a recommendation of S&ME for award. Do y'all have any questions for me at this time?
Any questions from the agency?
I have one if I could.
Certainly.
This is an RFP and not an RFQ, and based upon that, it is appropriate to consider price.
Yes,
So,
sir.
can you tell me what the price differential was between the 2 proposals?
Certainly. The price difference between the 2 proposals was a difference of $124,419.
With which proposal being the?
I apologize. The total for S&ME was $124,861, and the total for Dietrich Planning was $249,280 for all of the components that were included within the RFP on both ends.
Now I have a question. Are we picking some company from the 2, or are we just looking at what they've told us?
We were picking from the 2.
Can I get those numbers again, please?
Certainly. The total for Dietrich Planning was $249,280, and the total from S&ME was $124,861 for a difference of $124,419.
Or 50%.
Any other questions for the agency?
If I could,
Yes, sir.
there's a huge disparity in the numbers, and I'm just wondering if and SNME was half of Dietrich.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Is SNME has anybody talked to them about the scope of work? What's the expectation? Are we comfortable with knowing that we're going to get the same thing for that?
Yes, sir, the scope of work was listed in the RFP that was sent out. So they both answered to the costs of the different aspects of the scope. And it is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Jones, but it is the full scope that was included in the RFP, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So there's,
Here.
you have another question, Commissioner Ross?
No, I just, that's what I wanted to hear.
Okay, there's a question from Ms. Kemp that says, from SNME, who will perform the work? Will they incorporate past work in Palatka into their work?
This is John Jones from SNME. With regards to who will perform the work, you're speaking with the project manager. So I will be the man performing the work here.
Any follow-up question, Ms. D?
I have a question, Mayor.
Just 1 second, Vice Mayor. I'm just trying to see if she has a follow-up question because she's on the chat. Ms. Kemp, any follow-up? How will they continue or add to existing work? Mr. Jones?
I'm not quite sure how to respond to that question, sir. Could you please repeat the question?
She says, how will they continue or add to existing work? How will you continue existing work or add to it?
As part of our initial due diligence in the project, we would review all of the previous work that had been done by the city with regards to its planning documents, its community redevelopment documents, and its historic preservation documents, and incorporate all of that research into our basic due diligence and background information for this project.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
I was wanting to know, I feel that Ms. Dietrich has for years been there and done stuff. She knows background for us and what's really needed. Is there anything else she would know where to start or what we needed, because she's been being a troubleshooter for us over a period of time? Is there, even though I see that the price is more, ask her reasoning for maybe being double, even though she knows our system better?
Ms. Dietrich?
Mr. Mayor, through the mayor to Commissioner Brown. First of all, I don't know, we're not privileged to see the submittals now, and I assume by these questions through the mayor to Mr. Holmes that we're actually allowed to discuss. Is that correct?
Didn't hear that.
Her question was, are they able to discuss the submittals during the meeting?
In my opinion, they are able to discuss the submittals in the meeting, yes.
So if you'll turn, do you have the submittals in front of you?
I have mine.
Okay. It was a very specific request that the way the price per scope and all of the sub portions of the scope be broken out into exact hours per team member, all the way down to printing costs, ads, notices, and certified mail and everything in between. So if you look at your scope, at how I broke my submittals down, they're highly organized for each individual section of that scope. The biggest challenge that I know that you all were working with was you wanted to look at a new potential area to add to the north and to the south, as well as the need for the 3 existing area plans to be updated. for those of you who've been around a long time, you'll recall that when Woody and I started on this back 14 years ago, there was a urgent need to get something in place, and the time, budget, and scope was very minimal. So I wasn't allowed to actually do the plans that I would normally and have done for the last 20 years. So when you look at the plans, I was in a position that was compromised in order to meet the statutory requirements, and the time and budget weren't allowed, but I really emphasized that that was critical. So I created something that's never been done before called the umbrellas, and Carol Westmoreland and I had talked about it, and it was verified that it was legal. So when you look at the update of the 3 plans that have to be done, that takes into account not just data, but it takes into account all the things that were never allowed to be done in the first place, let alone in current time. So that's why that scope is broken out with all of those different needs that have to go in there, because they're not just needed now in present day and looking forward, but to cover what was never included. The new proposed areas, Area 1 and Area 2, you have to remember, this scope is not just to create the CRA plan. It's to do all of the finding of necessity pre-due diligence for all the statutes, compile all the indicators, create the TIF system and all of its estimates and tables, complete the FON, hold the hearings, pay for all the advertising, to then have the FON approved, and then move forward with all of the ordinances that have to go through, because that's not being handled by staff, plus all the workshops and the expenses that go with that, plus all the CIP analysis, then doing all of the CRA plans, comp plan consistency, which is fairly simple, plus all of the public meetings, and then going through all of the projects and their tables. And that's just for one area. So remember, that's a very comprehensive scope, and the fee that's associated with that is highly conservative, doing more than any of the other CRA plans and anyone in Northeast Florida. I can tell you that at $77,830, you're not going to find but maybe one plan that's been done in this half of the state for a few $1,000s more, and that was Lincolnville, and they were pressed for time, so they came in under about $7,000. So that's what we're looking at. So actually, if you look at the individual breakdowns, those are extremely conservative. When you add them all up, of course, it sounds very high, but at the other team's proposal at 124, I can't imagine being able to do 2 whole new FONs, all the due diligence and all the plans and all the expenses and the meetings, plus update 3 whole plans with everything that's required by the statutes.
Any other questions?
I'd like to say, I feel more comfortable with her because of the fact she has been there and seen our needs and know what we need more, and probably has a scope that gives us everything that we would need with that amount. So do we need a motion to?
Mr. Mayor, could I speak?
Go ahead.
Remember that staff is seeking direction. One of the options is to go ahead and select today, and the other option is to request personal appearance and presentations by the 2 selectees. So you do have both options available to you. Is that not right, Ms. Tucker?
That is correct.
So if you'd like to have a presentation by both, then that is an option for you. If you feel you have enough information at this time to make a selection, then obviously that's your option as well.
I guess I have a question, Mr. Jones. Having heard the comments from Ms. Dietrich, does your bid encompass all the services that she just listed off?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. We sat down and looked at this scope with great interest. We sharpened our pencils and put together a very competitive proposal. This proposal utilizes a consolidation of research activities and production activities, and also satisfies the city requirements as stated in the RFP, and also the statute requirements put out by the state with regards to the preparation and completion of finding and necessity studies and the creation and update of community redevelopment plans. So yes, sir, this does address all of the items requested in the RFP and does satisfy state and city requirements for community redevelopment plan updates and finding and necessity studies.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
if I may. So when I read these proposals, I did see the cost proposals, and I could see a difference in some of the language as far as the headers. Mr. Johns refers to task 3, task 2, task 1, but within that, they do have a lot of similar language. And when I saw the price differences, that was the reason I wanted to get out for the record what the differences were, because it was substantial. But in hearing what he just said, I feel comfortable if he's on the record saying that he has his bases covered, and making a motion to move this forward, if that would be proper. I don't know if staff is looking for support to move this forward. Their recommendation is to go with S&ME, and I would make a motion that we move forward this per the staff's direction and award this to them.
And that's a second.
Motion on the floor by Commissioner Rawls, a second by Commissioner McCaskill. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Questions called by Commissioner Board. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Nay.
Vice Mayor Brown, motion passes by a vote of 6-1. Thank you both for your applications, and thank you, Ms. Dietrich, for all the work that you've done for us.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Thank you. Moving on to item 4 of the agenda, fiscal year 2019-20 CRA TIF budget amendment number 1, proposed recommendation to City Commission for adoption.
Yes, sir. So before you have an amendment. In the summary, it includes a listing of what the amendment has. Based on item number 1 on the agenda today, we will not be moving forward with the amendment for the redevelopment incentive. Instead, a transfer from existing budget was recommended, and I'm in total support of that in lieu of actually amending the budget to change the figures. So in the summary, you'll see that the amendment includes $60,000 for wayfinding for an electronic sign. I have spoken to a few staff members, and I believe that number is going to be significantly less. However, we have identified $60,000 to amend the budget with for downtown, and also for South, there's a residential rehab grant that was awarded last fiscal year. However, it wasn't paid out. It was $11,400, so we're just going to roll that money forward. Also, you will see where the cash balance forward balances are going to be reconciled based on last fiscal year year-end figures. It is kind of, we have to wait on the final figures from the audit to be able to shore up those numbers. And so that's why it's kind of late in the year that you see this one. But it's just the amount that rolled forward from last fiscal year. And then you'll see the expense reserve amount being amended, and that's just the amount expected to be remaining at the end of the fiscal year, which is basically the revenues that we received this year plus the roll forward amount minus the expenses that are expected, or the budget, the expense budget.
Any questions?
If I may?
Yes, sir.
On the sign, Ms. Becker, you kind of confused me a little bit. You've got the additional 60,000. You said you don't think you're going to need that. We're still moving forward with the sign project, correct?
I will have Ms. Tucker speak to that because I believe at the last CRA meeting, we were given direction to move forward, which is why I included it in this amendment. We spoke at that meeting about 60,000, but I think since then they've received quotes and different things and different ways of, I believe you directed staff to look at different ways of exploring options. And that's why I'm saying that I still recommend us moving forward with the 60, but I do believe it's going to end up being on the high end.
I can give an update to that.
Okay.
So if you look at the local signs in the community, for example, the school district and also the chamber signs, I talked to the vendor who actually made the chamber sign, and they're indicating that they can get a sign at the existing location on 3rd Street that we talked about examining, somewhere in the range of 30 to 35,000, give or take. And so that was the last, and I spoke to them as late as today. I spoke to them previously, and they indicated that based upon what we have in place with the brick column that currently exists, to be able to put the 8-foot sign there wouldn't give enough clearance for us, for someone walking, but they can come up with some alternative or either raise the sign up so that it can be sufficient and we can get an 8-foot sign in the area so that it doesn't create any type of impediments to anyone walking or riding a bicycle or anything within that area. And so they believe that in the range of 30 to 35 is probably where you're going to be for a sign very similar to what you got at the chamber.
If I may, I took a look at that site as well. Is there any possibility of using the existing sign that's in the parking lot behind Maria Chili's, using that as a starter kit, allowing the current people that are marketing there to market, but also have the sign there? Because it seems like it would be a lot brighter, a lot bigger, and be able to catch a lot more attention than at the corner of 3rd. Just push it back that half a block.
I mean, I think either option's there. It really just depends on what the agency wants to do.
Yes, sir. If I may, real quick, staff is still preparing the information that you asked us for at the last meeting, and we're hoping to be able to bring you a more complete picture of what's possible by the next meeting.
And we can go ahead and explore both options and see which one gives us the better piece. And then from that point, have a recommendation if necessary to move out for an RFP or whatever in place, depending on where the pricing lands us based on procurement.
And then I also had somebody ask me yesterday about the other signs that we were looking at that the local vendors could purchase ownership of, that have the small signs that go below it. Has there been any progress on that while we're talking about signage?
Yes, sir. I'm still gathering the data requested for that as well.
Okay.
I truly hope to have a report for y'all at the next meeting.
There seems a few of the vendors I've talked to downtown are pretty excited about it.
Good.
And Ms. Tucker, you're also seeing if the signage can be changed out periodically. I'm just looking at.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I'm looking at all of the different options that y'all asked me to gather information on so that I can get y'all a completed picture at the next meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Tucker.
You're welcome.
Any other questions pertaining to the budget amendments? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor and a second. Any further discussion?
Question.
Questions call. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next up, SHNA request for funding. Vito Russo. Mr. Russo, are you on the line?
Mr. Russo actually made contact right before the meeting and asked if his item could be pulled and he could come back to the next meeting.
Consider it pulled.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. South Historic TIF brick streets. Report on public outreach regarding restoration of existing brick streets versus brick intersection restoration.
Yes, sir. So staff mailed a letter to all the property owners within the South Historic District, asking them to email their preferences on restoring the few remaining brick road segments or restoring the brick intersections within the district. As of today, there were 27 responses to the 248 letters sent out. 15 of those preferred the intersections, 9 preferred the remaining road segments. and 3 of the responses weren't applicable. Staff needs direction as to whether to move forward with the intersections so the matter can be taken in front of the Historic Preservation Board.
What's the difference in cost?
Mr. Griffith, can you?
Mr. Mayor, there is no difference in costs. Essentially, we have to raise and reset the brick on the existing brick road segments. So in lieu of doing that, we'd be raising and resetting them in another location.
Whenever you get a chance, I'll make a comment or whatever.
Go ahead.
Well, if you're talking about all of the various intersections or what have you, but there's a number of people who chimed in through email or what have you, and everybody had valid points, and it looked like it was kind of like a good mix of, there's not like a lopsided 80-20 as it related to the bricks being put down. Most people, when they invested in those communities, they took it as it was, in its historical nature. So to give them their I guess what they invested in or what have you, I think we probably need to look at completing those streets. We're returning them back to brick, and if we can still continue to do those intersections as well, I think that'll be great. But that's just what I read from the comments that I read in the packet. So that's just my comment.
Mr. Griffith, is there a difference in your maintenance cost over the long haul for the brick streets versus the brick intersections?
Mayor, in my opinion, brick streets have a lower maintenance cost. Just from a capital replacement schedule perspective, an asphalt road anywhere from 15 years, depending on how it's installed, versus a brick road. We've got some that were installed in the late 1800s that are still in good condition. So to answer your question more directly, as far as a capital improvement and replacement cost, it is less. I will say that you do have to sweep brick roads more than you do an asphalt road with curb and gutter. So there is an added maintenance cost in regards to sweeping and frequency.
So with a lot of those roads, they don't have the bases in there. They don't have the limestone base or whatever. Are you gonna construct the road in the same manner that it is now, or would you be coming back, putting the base down first?
So that is a very good question, sir. Thank you for asking that. So the existing scope actually calls for the brick to be raised, salvaged. Then we do base preparation, which would put a proper base down, because right now they're just on prepared grade, which is essentially sand. And then it puts them back in those 3 segments that you have on Kirkland and Hotel. The alternative Ms. Tucker presented basically takes that same square footage and applies it to the intersections on the interior of the historic district, not the exterior, versus putting them back on those 3 runs on Kirkland and Hotel.
Okay, any other questions from the agency? Seeing that, I think, and I'll give my opinion, I think that it's kind of early in the game. You've only got 24 responses. You got roughly 10%. I would suggest that we wait until the next meeting to see if we get a little bit more participation, or even try to set up, if nothing else, maybe some Zoom meetings with some people in the area to see if we can get more input from them as to what's in place.
I agree.
And I think, and if we need to participate in any kind of way in that, it's fine. We're willing to do so, kind of like what we did over on 3rd and Madison on the south side, on the north side.
I agree.
I do too.
Okay.
So is there a motion to table until our next CRA meeting?
So move.
Second.
Motion on the floor, second by Commissioner Rawls. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to TIF financial report for the second quarter, mid-year, October 1st through March 31st. Ms. Becker.
Yes, Mayor. This is your 6-month report. Not really much has changed from the last report that I gave you. Last meeting, we spoke about revenues and how we missed by about $5,000 total across all 3 districts. And that was just due to the budgeting on the June figures from the tax or property appraiser's office versus the October figures final. If you move to the expenditures, your downtown district is going to look a little different now after we do the transfer from the facade and from the home improvement program. So you're going to see some activity there. Professional services and all 3 expenditures will have to be looked at again, depending on the proposals from the RFP that you spoke about earlier and the timing of that and the breakdown as far as each district's. Let's see. A lot of these transfers and reimbursements that you see in each of the districts are year end, so you won't see any activity in those until the very, very end of the fiscal year. And other than that, I don't think there's anything out of the norm going on.
Okay, any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Becker. Moving on do we have our closing comments? Do we have anything from North Historic? Any reports from North Historic? Any report from South Historic? Anything from downtown? From DPI? Nothing from Ms. D?
Ms. D said no, thank you.
She says no, thank you. Commissioner Campbell, any closing words?
No, sir, I have none. Thank you.
Commissioner Rawls.
I'm just glad that we're able to meet again. I'm looking forward to being able to get some things started downtown. You know, I know this goes without saying, but we've got a tough road to hoe ahead of us, getting the economy starting to move forward again, and with our downtown businesses opening up. So I encourage anybody that's listening to support your local businesses as much as possible. Help us get out of this hole that we're in, and look forward to more meetings in the future.
Okay. Mr. Holmes?
Nothing further, sir.
Vice Mayor?
Nothing.
Commissioner Borum?
I'd like to just thank Tate Miller and Mr. Wayne for the economic development piece that they are looking to invest in our downtown city of Palatka. So again, that's kudos to them, and it's a big plus for the city of Palatka. So that's all I have.
Okay. Commissioner McCaskill?
Nothing at this time, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Also, just kind of give you guys a heads up. Looking forward to making a big announcement coming up soon as it relates to new business coming downtown in the Winn-Dixie building. So just kind of keep your heads open on that. The announcement should be coming soon. And so we've been working diligently with them to make that happen. Again, thank you all for.
Mr. Mayor, if I could say one more thing, the Small Business Development Center, who we pay every year under their contract, has a lot of valuable resources for the businesses that do not know. There is help for the EIDL loans, for the PPP loans that have just been refunded. If anybody
just give them the meaning of the acronyms for those that don't know.
Okay, the Emergency Income Disaster Loan, the Payroll Protection Program. If anybody needs any help at all, they need to reach out to the SBDC. I know that in my communication with Cheryl Lynch, she has been probably the second busiest person in Putnam County, if not the busiest, in processing loans and getting help for the people. But just want to remind everybody that the resources out there, and we need to make sure that anybody that needs help is aware of it and is taking advantage of it.
Yeah, so Ms. Ms. Lynch chimed in. She put up the meaning of the acronyms. I had it. I want to go ahead and get Commissioner Ross to go ahead and put it out there. We're both a small business owners, I think, pretty familiar at this point, but we definitely appreciate you, Ms. Lynch, for the work that you're doing with small businesses around here. And for anybody that needs to contact Ms. Lynch what's the best way to contact you right now, considering we are practicing social distancing? The best number to reach her on is 386-666-1082. So anyone who needs to reach the Small Business Development Center, 386-666-1082. She can help you out. There's a second round of funding that's out for small businesses. And also you can contact the chamber as well, because the National Chamber is also providing some microloans for small businesses and grants as well. So all those things exist. And there's a report that was mailed in to Mr. Holmes for SBDC as well. The Federal Reserve is also launching a program per Ms. Lynch. So again, 386-666-1082. Thank you again, Ms. Lynch. If there's nothing else before us at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All right. There's a motion on the floor. We are adjourned, and the time is 5:52. Thank you very much. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be back for our 6 o'clock commission meeting.